"You're slower than death," he chuckled, slicing into a waffle like nothing had happened. No one said a word. Not his mother, not his father, not even me. I sat there, holding my cup of warm tea, watching my grandson laugh with a mouth half full. My hands didn't shake, my cheeks didn't flush, but inside, something sank. Not like a stone, no, like a tired body into cold water. Slowly, silently, finally. "Bryson," my son said, trying to sound half reproachful, "that's not very nice." But even he smiled. Not very nice. That's what they called it. Not cruelty, not humiliation. Just not very nice. I stood up slowly. My joints weren't what they used to be, but they carried me just fine. My chair gave a small wooden creak as I pushed it back. I placed my napkin on the table. Neatly, like always. "Is everything okay, Grandma?" That was my daughter-in-law, Trina. Her voice always sounded a little too loud in the mornings. "I think I'll go for a walk," I said. Nobody protested. Nobody got up to join me. The boy returned to his waffle, the man to his phone, the woman to her coffee. I stepped outside, pulling my coat close around me. The autumn wind had a bite to it, sharp enough to wake you up, but not enough to hurt. That's the kind of cold I liked. It reminded me I was still alive. I passed the hedges I'd planted 30 years ago when the house was ours. Mine and Harold's. Back then, I'd clip them every Sunday with shears and pride. Now they were overgrown, like everything else that once mattered. When I reached the gate, I stopped. I looked back at the house, not at the people, at the structure. The roof we replaced after the hurricane. The windows we upgraded. The kitchen I renovated so Trina wouldn't feel like she was cooking in a museum. All paid for by me. I wasn't sentimental. I didn't cry. I just walked on. There's a bench near the park on Monroe Avenue. Nobody uses it because it faces a blank wall. But that's why I go there. No distractions. Just silence. I sat down and folded my hands in my lap. The wind moved my coat. A yellow leaf landed on my knee and rested there. That boy, Bryson, 14, used to crawl into my lap and ask me to sing the moon song, the one I made up when he was sick. Used to draw me cards with, "You're the bestest grandma," in wobbly handwriting. And now he calls me slower than death. With a smile. What changed? Nothing. That's the hard truth of it. Nothing changed. Not really. People don't become cruel. They become comfortable. They stop hiding the small things they always thought. They stop pretending. My family had stopped pretending. And I, fool that I am, had kept on giving. Loans, gifts, down payments, groceries, tuition, vacations, kitchen tiles, backyard renovations. Even the fence they complained was too suburban. All mine. All written in my neat, old-fashioned hand on checks they barely remembered to say thank you for. At home, on the third shelf of the secretary desk, was a brown envelope. It held the draft of my will. Prepared 6 years ago, reviewed 3, updated last spring after Trina made a scene over Lily's college fund. I remember signing the update. I remember the pen slipping slightly as Bryson ran through the house, yelling about some game. They were all in it. Every one of them. Equal shares, no conditions. Because I thought that's what love looked like. Unconditional. I sat on that bench for a long time. An hour, maybe more. The sun shifted. The wind grew more impatient. A young man passed me, nodding politely. His dog sniffed my shoe, and I smiled. That simple, distracted kind of smile you give to things that don't ask anything of you. I stood up slowly, brushing the leaf from my coat. I didn't walk back home. I walked to the bus stop. And as I waited, I did not think of the waffle, or the laugh, or the silence. I thought of the envelope, and what I would do with it next. The bus came slower than I expected, but that was fine. I wasn't in a hurry. I hadn't been in a hurry for years, really. Not since Harold died and left the running around to the younger ones. Let them rush. Let them forget birthdays and appointments. I remembered everything. When the doors hissed open, I stepped inside and found a seat by the window. The plastic was cold, but the sun through the glass warmed my hands. Across from me, a teenager tapped on his phone, nodding to music I couldn't hear. At the next stop, a young mother with a stroller climbed aboard, her baby asleep and twitching like he was chasing something in a dream. I remembered that age. Not the babies, the mothers. 20-something. Always tired, always busy. I had 2 jobs and 1 Harold, and somehow we made it work. We didn't have vacations or granite countertops or wellness rooms, but we had enough. We built it, one grocery bill at a time. I got off near Riverview, the neighborhood with the big trees and the old houses. I used to clean some of them back when I needed the extra money. I knew every porch and mailbox by heart. I passed the yellow bungalow where Mrs. Kent used to live. Her husband once helped Harold fix our old furnace for free. People helped each other then. Not because they had to, because they knew what it felt like to have no one. My feet carried me without much thought. The familiar route turned into muscle memory. I passed the old Baptist church, the florist with the faded awning, the bench outside the pharmacy where Harold and I once sat and argued over which ice cream was better, pistachio or butter pecan. I ended up at the law office. Not a fancy one. Just Dale and Meyer, family law since 1978, printed in gold foil on a dusty glass door. I pushed it open, and the bell tinkled overhead. A receptionist looked up, young, nervous, red lipstick, too dark for her pale face. "Good afternoon," she said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, sweetheart. But tell Mr. Meyer that May Garrett is here. He'll know who I am." She hesitated. Most people do when an old woman walks in without fanfare. But then she disappeared into the back. 5 minutes later, there he was. Arthur Meyer. He used to call me Miss May back when I brought cookies to his desk while Harold and I worked on our will. He'd been green then, all nerves and files and stutters. Now he had gray in his beard and reading glasses that made him look like he read more than he talked. "Miss May," he said with a smile, "what brings you in?" I sat down across from him in his small office. It smelled of books and carpet cleaner. I clasped my hands. "I need to look at my papers," I said. "The ones you helped me draft. My will, my property, all of it." He raised an eyebrow. "Something wrong?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Me." He opened a drawer, pulled out a thick file, and laid it between us. My name, typed in black letters across the top. Clean. Simple. Honest. I leafed through the pages. So many signatures. So many agreements. So many quiet decisions made in the name of love. "I want to make changes," I said. "Of course. What kind?" I looked up at him, my voice steady. "I want to remove my son and his wife. And my grandson." Arthur didn't flinch. He simply nodded, the way people do when they understand more than they let on. "There's someone else?" "Yes. My granddaughter. Lily." He smiled slightly. "The one who brought you those flowers last Easter? The one who comes without asking for anything?" He began taking notes, quietly, respectfully. When I left the office, the file stayed behind, but something else followed me home. Not anger, not even sadness. Just a deep, Sober kind of peace. The kind that comes when you finally speak a truth you've been swallowing for years. It was afternoon now. The sun was lower, casting long shadows across the sidewalks. I stopped at the corner store and bought a single apple, just because I liked the way it looked. On my way home, I passed the elementary school Bryson used to attend. I remembered waiting outside the gate, him running toward me with his backpack bouncing, shouting, "Grandma!" like it meant something. Now he smirked over waffles and compared me to death. No, nothing had changed, but I had. When I walked back into the house, the kitchen was empty. My teacup still sat on the table, cold and half full. The chair I'd left was still pulled out, as if waiting for me to finish something I never started. I didn't sit down. I walked to the study instead, opened the desk drawer, took out the brown envelope, and I wrote a note on top of it, in careful script. To be returned, with amendments. The next morning, I woke before the sun. I always do when something's sitting on my chest. Not worry, not fear, just something unfinished. I didn't make breakfast. Let them feed themselves. Instead, I sat at the edge of my bed, still in my nightgown, and looked at the phone in my hand. I had the number saved under Midtown Bank, personal desk. Never thought I'd call it for anything but balance inquiries, but that morning, my fingers didn't hesitate. It rang twice. "Mrs. Garrett," the voice answered brightly. "Good morning, this is Melanie, your account advisor. How can I help?" "Morning, dear. I need to suspend some automatic payments." She paused, her tone shifting slightly. "Of course. Would you like to go over them together, or do you already know which ones?" "All of them," I said. "Every last one." There was a silence long enough to let in the birdsong outside. "Understood. Just to clarify, that includes your family-linked transfers, the monthly allowances, tuition assistance, credit line support, auto insurance." "Yes." Another pause. "Very well. I'll begin suspending them immediately. May I ask?" "No, you may not," I said, but with a smile. "You've been kind, Melanie." "That's enough." She didn't press. Good woman. I'd have brought her a pie if I could. While she clicked away in the background, I reached for my notepad. The yellow-lined one I kept for serious things. Not grocery lists or recipes, but the kind of list that helped you see where your life was leaking. I wrote, mortgage, $1,950 month. Bryson's school fees, $725. Trina's car lease, $410. Cable, Tory, internet, $180. Emergency fund, variable, grocery cards, $200 week. Household utilities, never reimbursed. Annual family vacation. Contribution, $5,000 plus. I stopped. What was the point of going further? Melanie's voice returned. "All suspensions complete. For your security, I'll confirm everything in writing by email today." "Thank you. One more thing," she added gently. "Would you like to schedule a financial review? Some clients in your situation consider creating a trust or revising access to their accounts." I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, "Yes, I'd like that. Soon." We set an appointment for Friday. When I hung up, I felt no triumph, no rebellion, just quiet. The quiet of a page turned. Around 9, I heard stirring in the kitchen. Trina's voice floated down the hall, light, performative. "May, are we out of oat milk?" I didn't answer. A few minutes later, footsteps padded toward my room. She knocked once. "You okay in there?" I opened the door, still in my robe. Her eyebrows rose slightly. She hated when I wasn't presentable in the mornings. "I'm fine," I said. "Just resting." Right. Okay. Her smile was tight. Well, we're heading out in a bit. I've got Pilates and Bryson has his. She waved her hand vaguely. Some group project thing. Do you need anything while we're out? No. She waited a beat too long. She was expecting something. Maybe a request. Maybe money. I gave her nothing. All right then, she said. Have a good one. When the door clicked shut and the car pulled out, I exhaled. The house finally felt still. Not peaceful, just still. I changed clothes slowly, choosing something simple, comfortable. Then I went back to the desk. The envelope still sat there, waiting. I flipped through the pages again. Signatures, clauses, lines about dignity and duty that meant nothing if no one honored them. I found the clause about support in aging. Trina had insisted on that one years ago, said it gave legal clarity for future decisions, medical, residential, even emotional. At the time, I'd thought it was prudent. Now it looked like a leash. I folded the pages carefully and slipped them into a new folder. I didn't want the old brown envelope anymore. It had the wrong smell, like something rotten in the back of the fridge. By noon, I was ready. I made a cup of tea, not to calm myself, but to mark the moment, my kind of ritual. Then I sat at the kitchen table, alone, and waited. For what? A call, maybe? A shift? A sign? Instead, I got a text. From Trina. Can you cover the lawn care this month? Denny's got a family emergency. I stared at it. No hi. No thank you. Just an invoice in disguise. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another text came. This time from my son, Adam. Hey, Mom. Trina says we're short on the yard fund. Can you send the usual? Still no, how are you? I closed my phone. That afternoon, I walked to the mailbox, breathing in the crisp air. I dropped the old envelope inside, addressed to Arthur Meyer's office, with a small note. Revisions in progress. Please call. It was the first time in years I'd sent something that mattered. Not a check. Not a birthday card. Not a casserole recipe. Just a quiet message that someone, was finally changing. After the envelope was gone, I sat in the sunroom, surrounded by quiet. The kind of quiet that used to mean rest. Now it felt like breath held in the walls, like the house itself was waiting to see what I would do next. I reached for the old black binder from the shelf, the one with the loose rings and the frayed corners. Records, it said, in fading silver ink. Inside, everything was ordered the way Harold liked it. Years first, then categories. Bills, receipts, notes from school, letters, bank slips. It was our life in paper. I hadn't touched it in a while. I flipped to the tab labeled Family. There were manila sleeves tucked behind it, labeled in my handwriting. Adam, Trina, Bryson, Lily. The first folder I opened was Adam's, his name, in blue ink, written when I still believed the right pen could keep a son close. Inside, a check stub from 2011, $12,000. For Adam's first home, down payment. A loan agreement, never signed by him, $6,500, for business venture. 2 receipts for new tires. A withdrawal slip, $3,000, emergency dental surgery. That one still made me shake my head. The surgery, I later learned, was cosmetic. Next came Trina's folder. Lighter in paper, heavier in memory. Invoice. Kitchen remodel. Final installment paid by M. Garrett. Handwritten list from Trina herself. Suggested upgrades. Granite counters, recessed lighting, more modern faucet. A gift receipt for a spa weekend. Not requested. Just sent during a particularly tense winter. Then Bryson's. I took a breath. Private school enrollment forms, with my signature on the financial section. Notes about enrichment activities. 2 birthday party deposits, trampoline gym, and something called laser tag. A hand-drawn picture. To Grandma, age 6. It was of a dinosaur and a cake and a stick figure with gray hair. I held that one longer than the others. Folded it gently. Put it in my pocket. Last was Lily. I opened it slowly. There were only 3 things inside. A postcard from her first summer away at camp. Grandma, I saw fireflies and thought of your stories. A printout of her college acceptance email. She'd forwarded it to me with the subject. We did it. A thank you card. Handwritten, no occasion, no request. Just because I love you. I closed the binder. Then I sat back and stared out the window. I had spent so many years mistaking patterns for love, repeating the same dance. They ask, I give, they forget. I excuse. When you do that long enough, you start calling it generosity. But it isn't. It's fear. The fear that if you stop giving, they'll stop pretending. And they had stopped pretending anyway. I went to the kitchen and made a sandwich. Egg salad, just the way Harold used to like it, with a touch of paprika. I didn't feel hungry. I just needed something normal to do with my hands. After lunch, I opened the cabinet where I kept the cookie tin. Not for cookies, that was long gone, but for other things. Things I didn't want to forget. Inside were the deed to the house, the insurance policies, a copy of my living will, the folder marked medical, and another envelope. This one was blank, untouched, waiting. I took a pen and wrote in block letters, For Lily. Then I tucked inside the printout from the bank, confirming the suspension of all automatic payments. A clean list, every transaction now marked inactive. I added a note. If anything happens to me, give this to Arthur Meyer. He'll know what to do, and don't let anyone tell you who you're supposed to be. I see you, Lily. That's enough. I sealed it, taped it shut. The doorbell rang just as I was putting the tin back. I froze. Then I heard voices. Laughter. Bryson's voice. I opened the door. They were all standing there. Adam in his work jacket, Trina in her workout gear, Bryson still in school uniform. All smiles, all energy. Hey, Mom, Adam said. We were just passing by. Thought we'd grab coffee and see if you wanted anything. It was forced, staged, a script. No, thank you, I said. Trina tilted her head. You sure? We can bring back one of those muffins you like. I looked at Bryson. He was tapping something on his phone. Didn't even look up. No, I said again. I'm not in the mood for sweet things today. Adam hesitated. Everything okay? Everything's changing, I said quietly. That's all. They didn't understand. Not yet. But they would. The text arrived at 6:42 that evening. Hey, Grandma. Mom says you're acting weird. You mad at something? LL don't say it's the joke was just messing you old PPL get touchy. I read it once. Then again, no punctuation, no apology. Just a digital shrug and a lazy jab, wrapped in that defense they all seem to think makes cruelty okay. Just messing. I didn't reply. At 6:59, the phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Trina's voice floated in after the tone, too light, too bright. Hi, May. Hope everything's all right. Adam said he stopped by and you seemed different. If something's wrong, let's not make it a whole thing, okay? We're family. Talk soon. She hung up before soon had time to mean anything. Then came the second voicemail. This time, Adam. Mom, listen, I don't know what's going on, but if you're upset, you should say something. Don't freeze us out. We're all under a lot of stress. Bryson's got midterms, Trina's real estate board exam is next month, and I've got, well, let's not add drama. Just let us know how to fix this. Okay? I turned the volume down. His voice grated more than comforted. Fix this. They always wanted a fix, a bandage, a workaround. Something that required me to change. My mood, my expectations, my silence, but never them. When they wanted money, they knew how to ask. When they wanted help, they found the time to be sweet. But now, faced with a quiet shift, not anger, not accusation, just absence, they were squirming. I poured myself a cup of tea. It was barely warm, but I drank it anyway. They didn't call the next morning, didn't text. Maybe they were waiting me out. That was their pattern. Wait for the storm to pass, then pretend it never rained. But I wasn't weather. I was the ground they'd walked on for years. At noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it slowly. It was Lily. She stood there in jeans and a faded college sweatshirt, holding a bag with 2 sandwiches and that lemonade I liked, the kind with real pulp. "Can I come in?" she asked, a little breathless. I stepped aside. We didn't say much at first. She put the bag on the table. I set out 2 plates. We sat in the kitchen, the house quiet around us. "I didn't know about the joke," she said after a while. "I wasn't there." "I know. But I heard." She didn't rush. That was what I always loved about Lily. She let silence breathe. "I asked Bryson about it. He said it was nothing, said you were just being dramatic." I raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a crumpled note. "So, I went through the trash and found your bank letter, the one confirming the payment suspensions." My fingers tightened around the glass. "I didn't read it all," she added quickly. "Just enough to understand." "Understand what?" "That you're done." We sat in silence for a while. The house seemed to listen. "I didn't know how much you were doing," she said quietly. "I mean, I knew some of it, the tuition, the bills, but not all of it. I didn't want you to. But why not?" I looked at her. This girl with her serious eyes and her unbrushed hair. She didn't want anything from me. Not then. Because I thought if I told anyone, it would sound like complaining, and I didn't want to be that kind of woman. She nodded. "Maybe you should have been," she said. A little earlier. I laughed. A small one. The first real sound of the day. "I've started changing things," I said. "The accounts, the will, the rest will follow." She blinked fast, like someone trying not to spill. "You don't have to leave me anything, Grandma." "I didn't come for that." "I know," I said. "But if you do, I'll use it well. I know that too." She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Her grip wasn't soft, it was solid, the way you hold on when something matters. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. It carried no messages, no omens, just air. But it felt different. When Lily left, I walked her to the door. She turned before stepping off the porch. "I'm proud of you," she said. Funny. No one had said that to me in years, not since Harold. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it. No rage, no revenge, just a quiet, clear line in the sand. And the first person I drew it for was myself. Thursday morning, I ironed my best blouse. Not because I was going anywhere fancy. Not because anyone would see. I did it for me. At 10 sharp, I walked into Arthur Meyer's office again. He greeted me like he always did, standing up, shaking my hand, giving me his full attention. I used to think that was just politeness. Lately, I've started to think it's rare decency. "I've drafted the revisions," he said, motioning to a fresh stack of papers. "Removed Adam, Trina, and Bryson from all beneficiary positions. Allocated the full estate, both liquid and property, to Lily Garrett." I nodded. He paused, as if searching my face. "Are you certain, May?" "Let me tell you a story, Arthur," I said, settling into the chair. "When Harold and I bought our first house, we didn't even have furniture, slept on the floor for weeks, but we had a jar, a literal jar, labeled Future. Every week, we'd drop in whatever we could spare, sometimes $1, sometimes a quarter. When Adam was born, we emptied that jar and opened his first savings account. That's the only reason he got to college. That jar wasn't full of coins. It was full of hope." Arthur said nothing. He knew it wasn't just a story. "I've lived my whole life dropping coins into other people's jars," I said. "And I finally realized none of them were saving anything for me." He gave a slow, solemn nod. "Then I'll finalize everything. Lily will be notified as the sole beneficiary. Do you want to set up a trust as well?" "Yes. I want it airtight. Protected. Unreachable by anyone else. I'll see to it personally." He slid the papers over. I read every line. Not because I didn't trust him, but because it mattered. Every comma, every name crossed out. When I signed, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt right. On the way out, I stopped at the grocery store, picked up some tulips, not for anyone, just for the table. Bought a lemon tart because Harold used to love them. I remembered him every time I passed that bakery case. Back home, I placed the flowers in water, sliced the tart, and made tea. The mail arrived at 3:12. Among the usual coupons and flyers was a thick white envelope. Return address, Midtown Bank, Estate Services Division. I opened it slowly. Inside was the official confirmation of trust creation. Account details. Beneficiary name, Lily Ann Garrett. I folded the letter and placed it gently inside the new tin, the one that held the truth now, not the crumbs of old duty. At 4:40, the phone rang. Adam. I let it go to voicemail. Then Trina. Then Bryson. None of them left a message this time. I suppose they'd started to understand. At 6:15, there was a knock at the door. Not Lily. It was Adam. He stood there, face tight, lips pressed into something that wasn't quite a frown, but certainly wasn't a smile. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside. We sat in the living room, the tulips between us. He looked at them like they were a strange code he couldn't decipher. "Mom," he said finally, "we need to understand what's going on." I didn't answer. "Bryson's been acting strange. Trina's worried. The bills, I repeated softly. "Of course." He shifted in his seat. "We just don't get why you're suddenly cutting everyone off. If we said something, if someone upset you." "You think this is sudden?" He blinked. "Well, you think I woke up one day, flipped a switch, and turned from your mother into a stranger?" Adam didn't know how to answer that. I did it for him. "This didn't happen in a day," I said. "It happened every time I was treated like a resource instead of a person. Every time I gave and got silence. Every time I showed up and no one noticed." He looked down. "I've changed my estate," I said. His head snapped up. "What?" "You heard me." "You mean—" "Yes. Mom, you can't just—" "I can. You're upset right now. People make rash decisions when I'm not upset, Adam, I said calmly. I'm awake. He stood, pacing now. This isn't fair. No, I said. It isn't. He stopped mid-step. This is betrayal, he said, voice low. After everything we've shared, we didn't share, Adam. I gave, and you took. He stared at me like he didn't know the woman in front of him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he never had. He didn't slam the door when he left. Adam wasn't the slamming type. He closed it carefully, like someone tiptoeing past a sleeping dog, afraid to wake something in me he couldn't handle. The house settled around me again, quiet as breath. I stayed in my chair for a long time, not because I was shaken. I wasn't. I was just still. And that stillness was new. After so many years of rushing to fix, to soothe, to explain, I had finally stopped. At 80, I put on my cardigan and went next door. My neighbor Doris had just come home from her church committee meeting. She opened the door with one eyebrow raised and a smirk on her face. Well, well, she said. Didn't expect to see you tonight. I brought lemon tart, I said, holding up the box. That was all it took. She ushered me in like she'd been waiting all week. Doris and I had known each other since 1973. Our husbands used to drink beer in the driveway and argue about baseball. Her George died a year before mine. Now we were two widows and one cranky cat between us. I sat at her kitchen table, the tart between us, steam curling from the kettle. It smelled like peppermint and starch and old secrets. All right, she said, pouring the tea. Out with it. I laughed softly. You think I came here to confess? I know a storm face when I see one. Yours isn't angry. It's finished. That caught me off guard. Yes, I said. It is. And then I told her everything, not the sanitized version, not the kids these days story we old women like to share over coffee. I told her the real one, the words, the waffle, the texts, the years, the silence, the small cuts that, over time, bleed you dry. Doris didn't interrupt. She just sipped her tea and let me speak. When I finally stopped, she leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly. Took you long enough, she said. I stared at her. I've been waiting for this, she continued, for you to finally see what they were doing. Every time you skipped lunch to pay their cable bill, every time you said they're just busy when they forgot your birthday. I wanted to shake you. Why didn't you? Because it wasn't my place. Because I thought maybe they'd come around. But mostly because I knew you had to reach this place yourself. I looked down at my tea. The cup was half empty and cold. I feel strange, I said. Good strange or bad? Empty, but in a clean way. She nodded. That's the grief of clarity. We sat in silence for a moment, the tart between us untouched. Then Doris leaned forward. Do you want to hear what I did? I raised an eyebrow. When my oldest started talking to me like I was a burden, I sold the condo I was going to give her. Quietly, cashed out, took a long trip through Italy, ate pasta in Florence, fell asleep drunk in Venice. Best decision I ever made. I smiled. They forgive you? They didn't have to. I didn't ask. Her eyes sparkled. There was fire behind them. The kind you don't see often in our age. Not because it's not there, because we're taught to smother it. You're allowed to keep what you've built, May, she said. Even from your own children. That sentence struck deeper than anything Adam had said all week. I stayed another hour. We finished the tart, laughed about old boyfriends, talked about arthritis creams and the price of eggs. It felt like the most honest evening I'd had in years. When I got home, the house didn't feel so hollow. It felt cleared out, like something heavy had been swept away. I went to bed early, slept without pills, dreamed of nothing, and that was enough. Saturday morning came soft and gray, the kind of sky that made the air smell like wet linen. I woke before the clock again, sat up slowly, and listened. No car doors, no voices. The house belonged to me. By 9, there was a knock at the door. Not the hurried rapping Adam used, not Trina's impatient push of the bell. 3 light taps. I knew before opening. Lily stood there, hair tied back, a folder hugged against her chest. She looked like she'd been rehearsing something. "Morning, Grandma," she said. "May I come in?" "Always." She stepped inside, glancing around as if to check no one was lurking. Her hands tightened on the folder. "I brought you something," she said. "And I need to tell you something, too." We went into the kitchen. I poured tea for both of us. She stayed standing, shifting from foot to foot. "What is it, dear?" She placed the folder on the table and pushed it toward me. Inside were printed pages, screenshots of texts between Adam and Trina. I didn't reach for them. "They've been planning to come here together," she said quietly. "Not to apologize, to pressure you. They think you're confused. That if they show up together, they can talk you out of the changes." Still, I didn't touch the folder. I just listened. "They're angry," she continued. "Not just about the money, about control. They think you're, what did Trina call it? Acting senile." My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice steady. "And you?" "I think you're finally being yourself," she said. I looked at her then. Really looked. The thin silver stud in her ear, the bitten nails, the faint scar on her chin from when she fell off her bike at 8. All the small truths a person carries without knowing. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because I don't want you to be blindsided. Because they're my parents. But you're my heart." That did it. A tear slid down my cheek. Not sadness. Recognition. I reached across the table, laid my hand over hers. "You're braver than I was at your age," I said. "No," she said. "I'm just watching you." We sat like that for a while, hands folded, tea cooling between us. Then she said, "I didn't come for the money. I know you're changing things. If you decide to leave something for me, I'll be grateful. But if you don't, I'll still come. I'll still make tea." "I know," I said, "and that's why you'll get it." Her lips trembled. "Grandma," I squeezed her hand. "I've made the papers airtight. The trust is in your name now. They can't touch it, not a dime, even if I die tomorrow." She covered her mouth. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll live your life with dignity. Say you won't trade yourself for crumbs." "I promise," she whispered. We let the promise sit in the air, heavy, real. She stood after a while, wiping her eyes. "I should go. I've got a shift at the library." "Take a sandwich," I said, handing her one wrapped in wax paper. She smiled. "You never change." "Oh, I've changed," I said softly. "More than you know." At the door, she turned back. "They're going to come soon. Probably today or tomorrow. Don't let them twist you." I nodded. "I won't." When she left, the house felt warm again, even with the clouds pressing against the windows. I went to the living room, sat down, and opened the folder she'd left. I read the texts slowly. Adam's words, Trina's. Plans to talk sense into me. To protect family assets. To keep Lily from manipulating. I closed it and placed it on the mantel. Let them come. I wasn't the same woman who used to apologize for existing. I'd drawn my line, and this time I wasn't moving it. They came on Sunday afternoon. I saw the car first. Adam's SUV. Pulled up right to the curb like it owned the road. Trina stepped out first, already smoothing her hair, lips pursed like she was walking into a courtroom. Adam followed, carrying that expression I knew too well, halfway between disappointment and rehearsed concern. Bryson didn't come. I wondered if they'd told him to stay home, or if he simply couldn't be bothered. They didn't knock. They rang the bell. Twice. I opened the door and stepped aside without a word. Let them walk in like they always had, as if this house was theirs too, as if nothing had changed. They made it as far as the kitchen before I spoke. "You've both been talking," I said. Trina turned, blinking. "What?" "About me, about how I've changed, about how I need protecting." Adam exhaled. "Mom, can we sit?" "No." That stopped them. I stood by the table, steady. Behind me, the tin with the documents sat quietly, untouched. "I know why you're here," I said. "But let me be clear. I'm not confused. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not grieving. I'm done." Trina crossed her arms. "We're worried about you." "No, you're not," I said. "You're worried about what you've lost." Adam stepped forward, hands raised. "Mom, this isn't like you. You've always been generous. Always put family first." "Exactly," I said. "I did." He blinked. "And now?" "Now I'm putting myself first." They didn't know what to do with that. The air in the room shifted. Too quiet. Too exposed. "We just think," Trina started, "that maybe Lily's been getting in your ear. She's young. She doesn't understand." "Don't," I said, my voice sharper now. "Don't you dare bring her into this. Lily didn't take anything. She didn't ask. She came. She listened. She sat with me while I said things none of you ever bothered to hear." Adam looked wounded. "That's not fair." I stepped forward. "Isn't it? You act like we've done something terrible." I let out a short laugh. "You think it has to be terrible to be wrong? You think you need to hit me to be cruel? All those years of silence. All the times I paid your bills and you didn't even say thank you. The way you looked at me like I was a checklist. The way your son laughed in my face. That is something." Trina's arms dropped. She opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. "I am not angry," I said. "I'm not here to punish anyone. I just finally realized what I'm worth. And I'm no longer interested in buying affection." Adam stepped back like I'd struck him. Trina looked toward the door, then back at me. "We made mistakes," she said, voice low. "We got used to things, but we do care." I met her eyes. "Then you'll be fine. Caring doesn't require a will." No one spoke. The silence stretched long, deep, the kind you couldn't fill with small talk. "I'll always be your mother," I said finally, "but I won't be your bank or your excuse." They didn't stay much longer. Adam muttered something about talking later. Trina offered a final brittle smile. They left like they came. Together, rehearsed, tense. When the door shut behind them, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel sad. I felt like I'd finally walked out of a room I'd been locked in for decades. I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window. The sky was still gray, but the house, my house, felt lit from the inside. That night, I didn't turn on the television. I didn't read. I didn't even make tea. I just sat. In the living room, in Harold's old chair, the one that leans slightly to the right and creaks if you shift too quickly. I left the lights off. Let the dusk settle around me, the shadows moving slow and soft across the floor like memories too tired to haunt. I wasn't lonely, not in the way they assume. Loneliness is needing something that isn't there. But tonight, I didn't need anything. Not approval, not explanation, not company. Just the quiet of my own breathing, steady and unhurried. I used to be afraid of silence. In the years after Harold died, I'd fill every minute, dishes, laundry, baking, calling at him just to hear a voice, even if it was half listening. I thought movement kept the grief from settling, but it just made it quieter, more patient. Now I've learned stillness is not emptiness. Sometimes it's a kind of resistance, a soft refusal to be consumed. I thought of Lily. I thought of Doris. I even thought of Bryson, that look on his face when he texted me. Amused, detached, untouchable. He thought he was making a joke. He didn't know he was building a wall. They all had, really, brick by brick, assumption by assumption. She'll understand. She won't mind. She always helps. She won't say no. And I hadn't. I'd let them. Because I believed in the stories I was taught to live. A good mother sacrifices. A good grandmother gives without asking. A good woman keeps the peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's just delay. And I'm done delaying. I got up, walked barefoot to the kitchen, and opened the drawer where I kept the birthday cards, the ones I'd saved from over the years. Adam's handwriting as a child. To Mom, the best cooker ever. Then in his teens, thanks for always being there. Then in his 30s, just signatures, no words. Trina's were always glossy, store-bought, impersonal. Bryson stopped giving them altogether 3 years ago. I set the stack down and looked at them one by one. They weren't painful, just faded. Love doesn't die in fire. It dies in dust. The clock ticked quietly on the wall. It was past 10 when I finally moved again. I got a blanket, wrapped it around my shoulders, and stepped outside onto the porch. The air was damp but not cold. A few porch lights flickered down the street. Somewhere, a dog barked twice and stopped. I used to sit here with Harold in the summer, watching the stars rise behind the maple trees. He used to say, "They'll never remember the checkbooks, May, but they'll remember the hours." I believed him. I still do. And tonight, for the first time in a long, long while, I gave myself an hour. No one else's needs, no interruptions. Just me and a porch and a sky that didn't ask anything of me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't bold. It wasn't even new. But it was mine. And that, I decided, was enough. Monday morning, the phone rang. I let it. Then I picked it up on the 5th ring. I knew who it was before I heard the voice. Grandma? Bryson. It was the first time he'd called me in over a year. Not a text, not a forwarded meme. A real call. "I'm here," I said. Silence on the other end. No background noise, no distractions. He was somewhere alone. "Mom and Dad are freaking out," he said finally. "I know. They said you're leaving everything to Lily." I waited. "Is that true?" "Yes." Another silence. I could hear his breathing. Fast, uncertain. "Why?" he asked. But there wasn't anger in it, just confusion. Maybe something like hurt. The kind that comes when you realize the world doesn't orbit you. "You remember that joke you made?" I said. "Over breakfast?" "Yeah." "Did you mean it?" He was quiet again. "I thought it was funny," he said, weaker now. "I didn't think you'd take it serious." I closed my eyes. "That's the problem, Bryson. None of you thought I would ever take anything seriously. You thought I would just keep sitting there. I didn't mean to. I know, but you did." He sighed. "Mom says you're punishing us." "I'm not." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm giving myself back to myself." He didn't know what to do with that. I softened my voice. Bryson, I loved you since the day you were born. I still do. But I won't reward cruelty. And I won't reward silence. I wasn't trying to be cruel. But you were, I said. And even if you didn't mean it, you laughed. You didn't look back when I left the table. You didn't ask where I went. You didn't call until now. I was busy. Yes, you were. He exhaled into the phone. It sounded like he was sitting down now. Are you mad at me? No, I said. But I'm not going to protect you from the consequences of how you treat people. More silence. Lily's always been your favorite, he said quietly. She's never made me feel like a chore, I replied. I heard him swallow. The kind of sound you make when something lands harder than expected. I just thought you'd always be there, he said. I was, I said. Until I wasn't. He didn't speak again. I waited. Then I said gently, I hope you learn from this. I really do. But it's no longer my job to teach you. He nodded, I think. Or maybe I just imagined it. Then he said, okay, and hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time. I didn't cry, but I felt the ache of ending something I had once believed unbreakable. That afternoon, Doris knocked on the door. She brought a slice of banana bread and no small talk. Was it him? She asked. Yes. How'd it go? As well as it could. She handed me the plate, warm and smelling of cinnamon. You need a walk? No, I said. I need a chair and quiet. She smiled. You always did. She left, and I sat again. The light through the window was soft, golden, the kind that used to make Harold say, the world's trying to apologize. Maybe it was. Or maybe it was just the first day I didn't feel responsible for someone else's comfort. Tuesday, I walked to the bank. I could have driven, but I wanted the time. Wanted my steps to match my thoughts. Slow, firm, deliberate. The air was crisp and dry, the kind of morning that makes you remember you're alive because your lungs tell you so. I passed the bakery, still smelling of butter and early ambition, and the florist, where the same sun-bleached bouquet had sat in the window for weeks. Inside the bank, Melanie recognized me right away. Mrs. Garrett, she said, rising. I've got your paperwork ready. I nodded. She guided me into her office and shut the door gently behind us. A small kindness, a signal that what we were doing here mattered. She slid a folder toward me. This is the final confirmation. The trust is in place as you instructed. Lily Garrett is the sole beneficiary and trustee. All assets are protected. No withdrawals or changes can be made without her signature after your passing. I read every page. Carefully. I ran my finger down the margin of each form, reading each clause out loud, more for me than for her. Melanie sat silently, respectful. When I signed, I did so with a blue pen. I wanted it to stand out. I wanted someone to see that color one day and know I wasn't hesitant. Would you like to set up the charitable contribution next? She asked. Yes, I said. Let's do that. We moved through the next set of forms, $15,000 to the public library's literacy program, another $10,000 to the shelter where Harold and I used to volunteer. I named it In Memory of Lives Unnoticed. Melanie blinked when she read that, then nodded. No questions. By noon, it was done. I'll email you everything this afternoon, she said. Thank you. When I reached the sidewalk again, the wind had picked up. I pulled my coat tighter and walked toward the bus stop. On the bench sat a woman around my age, coat buttoned wrong, eyes scanning a folded paper bag like it held answers. She looked up as I approached, then shifted slightly to give me space. I sat. She didn't speak, but after a few minutes she said, without looking over, "You heading home?" "I think I'm already there." She nodded slowly. "That's a good place to be." Neither of us said anything more. The bus arrived. She stayed seated. I got on. At home, the mailbox held a thank you letter from the library. Typed. Polite. I read it twice, then set it on the table with my tea. I stared at it a long time. Not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. I wasn't just not giving to the people who took. I was finally giving to the people who asked for nothing. That afternoon, I called Arthur Meyer. "I want to add something," I told him. "Of course," he said. "What is it?" "A clause. A letter, maybe. Something Lily can read after I'm gone." "I can arrange that." "Make it clear that she gets it all," I said. "But only if she continues to live by what we talked about." He paused. "You want to attach conditions?" "No," I said. "I want to attach a reminder." He said he understood. I believed him. Before I went to bed, I wrote it in my own words, just in case, on lined paper in careful print. "Lily, I chose you not because you needed me, but because you saw me. Because you asked nothing and gave everything that mattered: time, attention, truth. I hope this helps you build something good. But more than that, I hope you never forget the difference between taking and being trusted. I believe in you. Love, Grandma May." I folded it and placed it in the new tin. Then I turned off the light and let the house return to its quiet. For the first time in years, I felt like every piece of my life was exactly where it was supposed to be. Wednesday brought no knocks, no calls, no new messages. The kind of silence people usually find unsettling. I found it beautiful. I spent the morning in the garden, cutting back the rosemary and lavender. My knees didn't like the kneeling, but I talked to them kindly, the way you talk to an old friend who stayed a little too long. The clippers were dull, but they worked. So did I. It felt good to do something with my hands that wasn't signing a check. I bundled the trimmings in twine and set them by the window. The house smelled of green things, of oil and sun. It reminded me of the kitchen Harold built, the one Trina called outdated, before she stripped it bare and replaced the oak with plastic shine. I let the memories come, but not settle. They were just guests now, not ghosts. After lunch, I heard from Lily. Just a text. "Thinking of you. The world feels steadier knowing you're out there." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the words, their shape, their weight. Then I wrote back. "It feels steadier because now I am." No emojis, no explanation. She would understand. That evening, Doris came over with 2 mugs of hot cider and a paper bag full of receipts. "What's this?" I asked. "My inheritance," she said with a snort. "George left behind a garage full of nonsense. I'm trying to figure out what's worth keeping." We spread the contents out on the coffee table. Warranties for toasters long gone. Ticket stubs from a drive-in movie in 1986. A folded napkin with a lipstick kiss and the words, "Don't forget me." Not her writing. She held it up. "Should I be offended?" "No," I said. "It means someone remembered him before you did. Doesn't mean they remembered him better." She stared at it, then laughed. "You always know what to say." "I don't," I said. "But now I know when to say nothing." We spent the next hour sorting papers, sipping cider, talking about the ways women carry more than they ever say aloud. Not because we like it, because we're taught that if we drop even one thing, everything else will fall. I'm done carrying what's not mine. I told her. She looked up, her eyes suddenly wet. You have no idea how good it is to hear another woman say that out loud. But I did. Before she left, she handed me a folded slip of paper. This was in the box, she said. Thought you might like it better than I do. I opened it. A clipped quote from a magazine. Freedom isn't loud. Sometimes it's just the first time you let a door close behind you and don't reach back to hold it open. I pinned it on the fridge, not for inspiration, for confirmation. After she left, I walked through the house and touched the walls like a woman blessing each room. Not out of ritual, out of gratitude. These walls had held me up through so much. They had carried my grief, my giving, my becoming. I wasn't trying to reclaim them anymore. I was simply living in them. That night, I slept with the window cracked, even though the forecast said it might storm. I wanted the air, the cold, the sound of things moving outside my control. At 3 a.m., thunder rolled low and long across the sky. I didn't flinch. I turned onto my side, pulled the quilt to my chin, and slept deeper than I had in years. Thursday brought with it the kind of quiet that feels earned. Not the silence of neglect, but the hush after hard truth. Like the calm after rain. Not because nothing happened, but because everything did. I spent most of the day sorting drawers. Not for the sake of order. I'm too old to pretend tidiness is a kind of virtue. No, I was looking for traces of myself I might have forgotten. Letters, receipts, things I wrote in margins when I still thought someone would read them one day and understand. In the bottom drawer of my bedroom bureau, I found Harold's old cufflinks in a cracked velvet box. Gold, but dull with time. I held them in my palm for a long while. He only wore them twice, once to a wedding, once to a funeral. I remember the way his fingers fumbled trying to fasten them, too proud to ask me for help, too slow to hide that he needed it. I put them back in the box and wrote Lily's name on the lid. She wouldn't wear them, but she'd keep them. Under a stack of sewing patterns I hadn't touched in a decade, I found something else. A folded napkin with my own handwriting on it. No date, no context. Just a sentence. I don't want to disappear quietly. I couldn't remember when I'd written it, but I knew exactly why. Back then, I thought the only way to keep from vanishing was to stay needed, to keep cooking, cleaning, giving, to say yes, even when I meant no, to sit through jokes and silence and watch myself become smaller in other people's lives. But now I understood something I didn't then. You don't disappear when people forget you. You disappear when you forget yourself. And I hadn't forgotten. Not anymore. That afternoon, Lily came by unannounced. I heard her before I saw her. The soft knock, the careful pause, the second knock just in case. She never rang the bell. Said it felt too impersonal. When I opened the door, she was holding a pie. Store-bought, she said, sheepish. Don't judge me. I won't, I said, stepping aside. But the crust better not taste like cardboard. We sat at the table, slices on mismatched plates, forks clinking against porcelain. She told me about the library, the new reading corner she was building, the volunteers who kept quitting, the little boy who came in every Thursday and asked for a story that doesn't end sad. There's not many of those, she said. No, I agreed. But the good ones don't end happy either. They just end honest. She looked at me then, eyes wide. That's why I came. For pie? She smiled. For this? She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her own letter to me. I wrote it last night, she said. Didn't want to say it out loud. Wanted you to have it. I opened it. Hands steady. Heart not so much. Her handwriting was clean, a little tilted to the right, the way Harold used to write his numbers. Dear Grandma, I don't know what I've done to deserve what you're giving me, but I know what you've done to make me want to live up to it. You are not quiet. You are not slow. You are not behind. You are a presence, the kind that stays long after people leave a room. I know because you've stayed in me my whole life, in every decision, every kindness, every time I chose dignity over convenience. You're giving me more than money. You're giving me a map. I will not waste it. Love, always. Lily. I read it once, then again. Then I folded it and tucked it into the tin without saying a word. She didn't press. That's why I trust her. We sat a while longer, talking about nothing. The weather, the price of good wool socks, a book she wanted me to read. When she stood to leave, I walked her to the door. She hugged me tight, then pulled back and said, "I'm proud of you." She says that a lot now, but it never loses weight. After she left, I stood on the porch for a long time. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows over the roses I hadn't pruned since spring. I watched a neighbor's cat sneak through the fence and curl up on the brick path like it belonged there. Maybe it did. I thought of Adam and Trina. I hadn't heard from them since Sunday. No more calls. No more warnings. No more requests. Maybe they were done. Or maybe they were regrouping. It didn't matter. I'd already made peace with what I could not fix. Some ties don't need cutting. They just unravel on their own once you stop holding them so tightly. That evening, I cooked myself a real meal. Baked fish, greens, a glass of wine. Not for company. Not for show. Just for me. The table had never felt so full. Friday morning, I stood at the kitchen sink, washing the last of the breakfast dishes, when I caught my reflection in the window. Not the full face, just the side, the curl of my mouth, the angle of my jaw, the quiet stillness in my shoulders. For the first time in years, I looked like myself, not the version they visited, not the woman who waited by the phone, who kept the fridge full, who stayed up late filling out tuition forms and wiring rent. Just May, a woman with time and choices, and a name that didn't need softening to be heard. I wiped my hands and turned from the sink. The light poured through the windows like it had somewhere to be. The whole house felt brighter, not because someone had opened the curtains, but because I had stopped dimming myself to match other people's comfort. I spent the afternoon writing, not letters, not lists, a memory. I wrote about my first job, the bakery on Glen Street, the smell of sugar and yeast and sweat, the way the manager, Mr. Delman, used to tell me I was sharp in the eyes. I wrote about how I learned to count change faster than anyone else, how I used to tuck half my paycheck into a jar under my bed. Not for anything in particular, just for someday. I wrote about Harold, about our first apartment with the slanted floor and the broken radiator, about the night we sat on the fire escape eating cold chicken, laughing like we were rich, about the way he used to say, "It's not how big the house is, it's how safe it feels." I wrote about Adam, the way his hand used to find mine in crowded rooms. The first time he called me Mommy. The last time he said, "Thank you." I wrote it all, not to forgive, not to relive, but to remember myself through it. And then I wrote one sentence in bold. I am not the sum of what I gave away. I left the paper on the table. That evening, Lily stopped by again. She didn't bring pie this time. She brought her old boots, the ones I bought her back in high school, now scuffed and too small. "I thought maybe you'd want to keep them," she said. "Why?" "Because they carried me through the part of my life where I became who I wanted to be. And now I'm ready to walk the next part in my own shoes." I took the boots gently and set them on the shelf by the door. "Then I'll keep them safe." We had tea. No ceremony, no updates. Just two women, one younger, one older, sitting in the late light, both full in ways that had nothing to do with food or inheritance or blood. When she left, she didn't hug me. She just touched my shoulder. A single, certain press. "I love you," she said. And I believed her. That night, I walked through every room of my house. I touched the backs of chairs, the tops of photo frames, the edge of the tin on the shelf. I stood in the doorway of the room where Adam used to sleep. Then the one Trina painted yellow, the summer she said she might move back in. I looked at everything not as a relic, but as something I'd chosen to carry, and was finally allowed to set down. I went to bed with the window open again. The sky was clear this time. No storm, just stars. Honest and quiet and not trying to prove anything. And as I lay there, I realized this wasn't a story about revenge. It never was. It was about returning. To yourself, to truth, to the kind of peace that doesn't depend on anyone else remembering your birthday. I don't know what comes next. Maybe a trip. Maybe a letter from Adam. I won't answer. Maybe just another quiet morning with the window cracked and the tea steeping slow. But whatever it is, it'll be mine. And that's enough. If this story found a place in you, don't let it sit in silence. Share it. Leave a comment. Let someone else know they're not the only one who woke up and chose themselves.